Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, A House Built on Sand with Jabril Khalif Al-Sadat and Mark Hunter Brooks. We're going to change it up a little bit today, and we're going to talk about policing in America. I think it'll be something that's been on everybody's mind, but Jabril and I, we were talking, we have some things in common and some things that are different, and we're going to just talk. So no script. We're just going to kind of let it all hang out and see what happens, but I hope you're going to enjoy the conversation. So I'll start off a little bit. I know that there's been a lot of stories in the news, about police brutality and about things that are going on. A lot of people feel oppressed as a result. Different racial groups, cultural groups have been affected by different things. And yet there's other groups that say, we need to respect our police and support our police. And you can make a case for both. But I think that the issues run deeper than what we see on the surface. And I'll use this to kind of start out with is it reminds me of something from a book that Ram Dass wrote in the 1970s. And he was a Harvard professor who went to India, studied with a guru, came back and became one of the ambassadors for Buddhism in the West in the 1970s. But he wrote a book called Be Here Now. And one of the things he said was on one of the pages, and I remember it because it was in my book, page 28 and 29, he had a cutout doll, and he had clothes for a policeman or clothes for a hippie. And he said, hippies create police and police create hippies. And he said, if you can't argue with someone, or if you can't love the people that you're arguing against or protesting against, all you're going to do is harden their heart. And I think that, along with some other things, you can't lead a horse to water, or you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, is people have to decide to change for themselves. And you can't force it on them. And the same thing you could say, and we won't talk about it, but some of these groups that would use court decisions to implement social change, people have complained about that a lot, is you can't force change upon other people. What you need to do is work to let them change themselves, because that's what creates this lasting change. But I think people have had change forced upon them. People have had different legal restrictions forced upon them. And I think that's what's caused a lot of problems for us. And the more that you get confrontational with people, the more you harden people's hearts. And it just ratchets up the tension and things that could lead to violence. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of. And that's what we need to understand. And that's also something that I think people in different racial groups and cultural groups don't understand. And I think we're becoming more and more aware of it and more open to it than we have in the past.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. How you doing today? And once again, like with Mark, I want to apologize for not having a regular kind of podcast. Hopefully we'll get better in doing that. And next week, inshallah, we'll be doing the Mysticism 2 to bring you that then. But this is a relevant subject to now because of all the shootings happening and what's going on. Unfortunately, Americans have always had or always lacked a sense of history. I don't know why. It's just that we don't care about history. We don't study history. We don't understand history. So we always think whatever's happening is happening right now. This stuff that's happening right now is not new. It didn't just happen, when Barack Obama was president, or when Clinton was president, or when the George Bush was president, or when Trump was president. If you look back, and you can Google this up, as racial riots in the 20th century and in the 19th century, most of the racial riots started. Why? Because the police was abusing a black person, a black man. This is nothing new. This is policing in America. This is the reason why we have the Second Amendment. This is not about individual policing. This is about a system. And what is this system? And the reason why the Second Amendment, and if people want to listen and people want to read and people want to study or people want to Google, read the argument that Jane Madison, one of the writers of the Second Amendment, and Patrick Henry was having about the Second Amendment and what the Second Amendment meant about a well-regulated militia. Read why the Southern states wanted a regulated militia, why they wanted people to own guns. What was their fear? Their fear was about African slaves rising up and killing them in their beds. That's it. Until Scalia came along in 2013 and reinterpreted the Second Amendment to mean individual gun ownership, which is stupid, which was faulty reasoning, faulty logic, any way you go. And now they're trying to say, no, not only does the Second Amendment means that you can have a personal weapon in your home, which Scalia said back then that there was limitations on that right. Now they're in the Supreme Court again saying that you can have the Second Amendment means you can carry a weapon, a pistol on you anywhere you go. Well, you know what that means? If European Americans can carry weapons anywhere they go, guess what? African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, we can all carry weapons. And this is the first time in the country where we're devolving back 2 centuries into the Wild Wild West, when we supposedly intellectually had moved forward to realize everybody carrying guns is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But why we want to carry guns is because we're afraid of each other. And why we're afraid of each other comes back to policing, because the thin blue line is breaking down. And that's what they used all these years to protect themselves, the majority from the minority. That's the period. It was policing in America has never been about protect and serve. It's always been about protection of some people from other people. Go ahead, Mark. You want to get in?
Well, and I want to say it, part of it comes back to awareness of other people's lives, because and I'll say you have white people who live their lives and they can have perfectly good lives with no run-ins with the police, no legal issues, no days in court. But you can have people in other cultures that don't have the same story, and they have different what should I say, different lives,
experiences.
They have different experiences, and we need to be aware of that. And one thing I like to say is, U.S. Constitution says, we want to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we can bring and give happiness for everybody in this country. Now, happiness doesn't mean that you make a lot of money. And I've said this before, is that I don't think people need to make more than what they need to survive. And the basic needs you have are shelter, food, clothing, and safety. And you need to be able to live in a peaceful environment so you can raise your family, and you can focus on your children and giving your children a good life and keeping them well fed and well clothed, and to educate them. That's what we need. And some groups will have that, and some people don't. And I think we're becoming more and more aware of it. I also think, going back to what Ram Dass said, is that what we're seeing is the end result of this ratcheting up, of hardening of our hearts, because people have tried to use force and intimidation to enforce laws or to enforce a peace, when they really shouldn't be doing that. You need to be changing people's hearts. You need to be teaching people at a young age, how to know right from wrong. And that can't happen in every culture or in every society, because people have different things going on in their lives, and their family members and their parents have different things going on in their lives. And we need to recognize that and change that so that people can be happy. And that's the thing I believe in. I want everyone to be happy. Not everybody can be rich, but not everybody should be rich. We should have enough money so that we can survive and be happy. And I grew up in that in the 1970s. I grew up in a textile and furniture mill town in the mountains of North Carolina, and everyone was happy. We didn't have people with a lot of money, but everybody was happy. They went and worked their 8 hours in the mill. Then they would go have a picnic, or they'd go down to the lake and go fishing, or they'd go hunting, or they'd go boating. And they had the time and the money to do it. But not everybody has that opportunity. And I think that's one thing that has become apparent in the past few years, and with all the different protests and the things that are going on. And that's the awareness that I think people need to come away with, is how can we bring about a change in everybody's hearts so that everybody can live in peace and everybody can strive to, make the future generations, happier people and working more in harmony with each other. And I agree with Jabril in that history doesn't necessarily tell what the reality was. And you've heard it said before too, the winners in wars write history. So things may be different during the war than what it was, but the winners wrote the history. And I think, you could say the winners wrote the American history too, and they don't talk about oppression of Native Americans. They don't talk about some of the horrific things that happened with slavery. You don't get a lot of those stories, but I think it's important that people hear it. And it's so that we can really integrate ourselves as Americans and understand the backgrounds that everybody comes from, and make it so that people will change because they want to change, and that they aren't being forced or intimidated into doing that.
Well, that's true. But like I said, the thing about Americans is that we're ignorant about so many things, right? And the one thing we mostly ignorant about is about our history, because if it doesn't affect our present life, we really don't care. Like I said, the thing about policing, it started even before we became a country. Like I said, it started with the Second Amendment. Then you can go all the way down to the 13th Amendment, when they're talking about, when you get to the 14th and 15th Amendment, about giving the black man the vote and about freedom. But in the 13th Amendment, if you read that 13th Amendment, it's codified in there that if you commit a crime, the government can take your freedom away from you. So basically, you revert back to being a slave, which that's when they started criminalizing black people. It's always had to be a way to control that certain segment of our society. That's what people have to understand about justice and law enforcement. Richard Pryor had an old joke that says, the only justice is just us, which is true, right? And then, we can go up, even if we can go past, the 13th Amendment, when we go past lynching. What was lynching was? Lynching was a way to terrorize a group of people to keep them in their place. It started right after Reconstruction, and it went all the way to Jim Crow laws. And they say we're a country of laws. Yeah, we're a country of laws. But what was Plessy versus Ferguson? That codified Jim Crow. We always been a country full of laws, but the laws have always been unjust. Just like the laws they're writing about now, that you got voter suppression, laws that, black folks used to count how many jelly beans in a jar to vote. Yeah, we've been a country of laws, but we've been a country of laws written by corrupt men that was meant to hold other people down. And what did they use? The legislature, what did they use to enforce their corrupt laws? They use the executive branch and the Justice Department. And that's what it is. Until policing, when people say policing has to change, nobody's talking about defunding the police. I've been in one of the worst neighborhoods in this country. You need police. Nobody's talking about defunding the police, but there's a lot of bad police in those neighborhoods. Black people do not commit more crimes than white folks. The only difference is you have more police in black people's neighborhoods, or they looking at black people for them to do more wrong. If you have a spotlight shined on you constantly, sooner or later, when there's bad actors, they're going to come along. You don't see people out in Arizona arresting all these white gangs, bicycle gangs that's cooking meth and taking it back and forth across the border. They get away with it. They're spending money. What about all the old mafia guys whose sons and grandsons are now lawyers, and they're making money on Wall Street doing identity theft, selling guns across country, across international barriers? You don't see all this because they're not looking for it. If the cops wasn't looking at you, of course you're gonna get away with it. And
or
that's
or or let me say it's easier to look for certain types of crime than it is for others.
yeah.
You know, and people don't have the stamina or the stomach to go after some of these tougher crimes
Right.
or the people doing other stuff. It's easier to pick on people that won't put up as big of a fight.
Yeah, and plus a lot of these people are being paid off too. You know, when I was on the street doing what I was doing, I paid off crooked cops. Matter of fact, the crooked cops was worse than the criminals. You know, they were a pain in the butt. But that being said, the criminal justice system, the police system, the policing in America is not about protecting and serving everybody. It's about harassing. You ask your question, and you can Google this. When did the black population, start growing in the American prisons? It started growing in the 1970s when all of a sudden blacks got radicalized and got what they call militant, which I don't understand that term, in the late 60s. And they refused to let people come in their house and just hang them or rape their wives or do all that other stuff because they decided to fight back. They decided they weren't going to lay down and just sit up there and get lynched. So if you look at that and the correlation between the prison population went up. And then in the 80s, when Reagan got in, the prison population went up again because it was about law and order. Law and order is a euphemism, means, excuse my language, put them niggas in jail, period. Right? And then in the 90s, when Biden came in with Clinton, because of the crack thing, black folks went to Clinton and said, look, you got to do, I was in Chicago. I know what the crack epidemic did. I understand when 13-year-old boys were buying M10s and they were shooting up the place, M10s and M9s, and killing people, bystanders and stuff like that. I knew what crack was doing to people's lives when they got hooked on crack. And then the black people went to especially the religious community, they went to Clinton and said, look, you got to do something about this crack in our neighborhood. It's killing, it's devastating our communities. So they wrote the 92 crime bill, you know, with the 3 strikes you're out and all these other, you know, harsh laws. But they didn't think about the consequences. Yeah. You know, they never think about the consequences.
So there was a statistic I heard a while back. They said that people planned prisons by the failure rate on English tests for 3rd graders. Oh. And it's, you know, and I'm just laying it out there, and I know what you're saying and where you're coming from, but I want to say, how can we change what's going on? And a lot of these things are symptoms of problems that may be bigger than that. One is acceptance of each other. We need to accept each other, and we need to create peaceful communities for everybody to live in. And also we have to encourage people to want to grow and develop and change. And I think back at affirmative action in the 1970s, and people complained about that. But let's think about that. I have a niece who their daughters went to an elementary school where everything was taught in Spanish. You know, they wanted to develop bilingual children. So, you know, you start your kids out in classes that are only taught in Spanish. And what happens is that in the first 4 years, those children lag behind other kids who were only taught one language. But in like the 5th grade, they start coming back, and by the 6th grade, they are up at that grade level. But you have to accept that time when people are in this transition. And I want to say that was one of the things that affirmative action was trying to change, was to create these opportunities for people to get experiences that didn't have the opportunity to get them in the past. And there was a lot of resistance to it because people were saying, you know, I want to have, you know, all these jobs and stuff. And they were thinking about it very materialistically. But you can't get groups of people, you know, up in the economic scale or up in the experience scale, up in higher levels of the community without giving them the experiences so that they can understand and that they can develop and they can grow. And that's one thing that I think would be important to do, is because I don't see a lot of, what should I say, hope and opportunity for people to get ahead. And I want to be able to provide that in some way, shape, or form, because I think the things that are happening are are things that can be changed if we can create opportunities for peaceful communities where people can grow and learn and develop ambition and
Well,
feel
you don't
successful.
you don't even hear about affirmative action. Affirmative action didn't last that long. Affirmative action was an executive order that Nixon wrote to try to get blacks into places that they were denied. Period. That's what it's supposed to be, right? Then a lot of Congress people said, "Well, how can you do affirmative action for black folks and you don't do it for white women?" You know, because our white women, they have been denied places, so do it for white women, right? Don't just only do it for black folks. Plus, it'll go over easy.
Right.
Okay, as soon as they did affirmative action, more white women got jobs than black people, right? Black women got
and then
jobs.
more black women got jobs than black men.
There were two black men. Then the Bakke case came along in the middle 70s, and that turned everything around. And Bakke was a Jew who didn't get into medical school, so he sued about affirmative action. So they would start yelling about, well, you letting all these, and then they put the stigmatism on it saying, you letting all these unqualified blacks in these jobs that white people can have. They had 200 years of affirmative action.
Yeah.
200 years of affirmative action. 200 years of getting jobs because they kept black folks out. Yeah. 200 years of moving up in the ladder because they kept black folks out.
Right.
But see, you talk about everybody seeing things and understanding things, because people don't understand their history in America. They don't realize, you know, they're saying, oh, you gave these blacks something, but I've had all this time to do all what I have. That's why right now, at this point, white wealth is 10 times more than black wealth.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, and
because richer, they smarter, they brighter? No. See, that's the lie they tell you.
Yeah.
I know a lot of rich people. They're not richer or smarter or brighter. It's because they had opportunities that somebody else didn't have because they were a different ethnic background. See, that's what I'm saying about America. America don't love America, but Americans don't know history.
And I was going to say in the 1800s, you know, there was discrimination against the Irish and the Italians, you know, and you had some of the same things. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, but they had the opportunity to become
it's not uncommon. Yeah, it's not uncommon. And then also too, people who were born in America, they have animosity against people who come to America, you know, to work because they feel like they're threatening their jobs or taking away their jobs. And I know that you have those issues as well, but it's you know,
it's like with the Jews. The Jews, they gave the Jews after the 50s, they gave the Jews the opportunity to become white. A lot of them had to change their name, like John Warner, you know, Louis Mayer, all of them. They changed their name. They could anglicize their names. Some Italians became Irish, you know, when the Irish were started let in. They had an opportunity to blend in. You know, I'm not going to blend in, no matter what I call myself. I can call myself Johnny O'Rourke. I'm still not going to blend in and be thinking of an Irishman, even if I spoke with an Irish brogue. You know, they're not going to believe it, right? So what I'm saying is, you're talking about people need to get together and stuff like that. People can't get together if they're still lying to themselves and saying, oh, this didn't happen. Oh, we don't recognize this experience. Oh, you know, my life never was that way. You know, I never seen a racist call themselves a racist. I never, even when they were lynching, I bet you the people that was lynching, they were saying, you know what? You know, because I don't know if you ever seen a picture of lynching. Yeah. You know, they were little kids. They were everybody coming out. You know, they had flyers. You know, this was a big thing, right? We're gonna have a burning, right? And they, you know, I see the pictures of the little kids and the women and everybody smiling and pointing, you know, at the tree and stuff like that. And I guarantee you, if you would go back then and you would ask any one of those persons there, were they a racist? You know what they say? No, I'm not a racist. I'm a God-fearing person. You know, I'm a good Christian. But this was law and order.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, and see, that's what I'm talking about, policing. Policing, when they realized to stop criminalizing black bodies and understand, you can't, just like in New York, I mean, just like in North Carolina, Elizabeth City, this man was driving away and they shot him in the back of the neck. You know, I heard all those gunshots on this tape across the street where they were shooting at this guy. Maybe the guy didn't want to be arrested. That's no reason to shoot him. You know, Dylan Ruth, killed 9 people. They went in and they arrested him. They talked to him real nice. They took him to Burger King because he was hungry, and they took him back. I don't know if you ever watch Cops. I seen white boys get out on cops, curse cops down, chase them, fight them, do all kind of stuff to cops. And guess what? Cop never pulls his weapon, never shoots at him.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what it is? It's an attitude. How dare this nigga run from me? How dare when I tell you, just like I was seeing this lieutenant that was in Virginia, and they were telling him to get out the car, and he didn't want to get out the car because he was afraid. And the cop, the more he would resist the cop, the angrier the cop would get. Told him, "You're getting ready to ride the lightning." In other words, he's getting ready to tase him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had his attitude of that. How dare this black man don't take my orders? How dare he don't comply? How dare he don't listen to me? I'm gonna make sure he listen to me. He gonna have to bow down to me. It's that attitude that you that you have to get away from. And to get back to this part before I let you go, the point I wanted to make. When you talk about the Constitution comes out of comes out of Rousseau's social contract and come out of Locke. That's where they got their ideas from. These ideas are just that. They're ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We can make them great, we can make them right, but they're just ideas. They're superfluous. They're amorphous. They don't mean anything. They're abstract. Now, if we do want to make a perfect union, if we do want to make a democracy, we have to work at it. And to work at it means we all have to give something up to make it work. And until we do that, it's not going to work because it's always one group against another group, and some group is always going to feel disenfranchised. And you have to enfranchise everybody by making this a more equitable society. And you have to make sure that when people see police officer coming, they feel comfortable and they don't have to worry about, am I going to end up dead tonight? Yeah. That's it.
And I think you make a great point, is that everybody's got to work at it, and everybody's got to give up something. And you have parents who sacrifice for their children, and people understand that, but you don't necessarily have people in this day and age who want to sacrifice for the community. You have people who they call the greatest generation, grew up during the Great Depression and World War II, that they knew what it was like to sacrifice for the community and to help other people, because they had to do it in order to survive in the Great Depression. And they had to do it in the rationing after World War II. But you had this great growth in service clubs and great growth in community work and stuff like that that's kind of fallen off since the 1980s. But I think it's very important that people be taught this at an early age, is that you need to sacrifice for the community. You need to sacrifice for other people. You need to be other-centered, and you need to work together. We all need to work together as groups in order to advance our communities and our nation. And when we feel segregated or separated, I think that just causes it complicates a lot of things, to where we need to get beyond. I don't want to say we need to get beyond it. We need to understand it and understand each other, but we need to do it with the goal of loving each other and wanting to work together with each other to create the environment that everybody's going to want to live in.
Yeah, it's not hard being an American. I have more in common with some white folks than I do with some black folks. Some black folks I don't even want to be around to deal with,
Yeah.
But because it's not about pigmentation of skin. It's about values. It's about what you believe in. It's about how you live your life. People don't realize that when they try to put everybody in these different packets and say, okay, because you one thing, this is what you are. I have more in common with some Christians and Jews, especially Jews, than I do with some Muslims. It's not about, it's a value system. That's how you should judge people, about what do they value, what do they believe in. Not, how much melanin they have in their skin, or what do they call their creator or don't call their creator. That's not what it's all about. But we haven't intellectually, human beings haven't reached that point, unfortunately. We still in our silos because it works for us politically, economically, and as long as that happens, we're going to do it. You got your race and all them other stuff out there.
And you had a good phrase. It works for us. It works for us. So, and it's not thinking of the greater good. It's not thinking of everybody and helping them all out. So it was interesting.
So the last thing I have to say is, it's not about defunding the police. It's about reforming the police to make policing work everybody. It should be about public safety, not about going out there and trying to put your foot on somebody's neck. And as for me, I'm Jabril Al-Sadat. Masalam.
Okay. And I'll also say it's about us getting involved with each other and getting involved in each other's life and getting involved in the community and not being so involved in ourselves and in our own career and our own family. Is getting involved with everybody's family and everybody's career and everybody's future. And that's what I think is something that's been lacking for the last 40 years as well. So there you go. Leave us some comments. I hope this generates some comments, and I hope you all like this podcast. So this has been House Built on Sand. Jabril and Mark signing off. Y'all take care.